Design systems is such a big thing in the design world, especially using certain tools that help you accelerate and create a design system. But we know that, if you're going to have different teams, different products, and this is all within one application, which can be huge. If you don't have a design system, we know things will be inconsistent. If you have people going rogue, all of a sudden this drop down over here is going to look different than the drop down on this page. And that consistency is going to just add to the cognitive load, more tech debt, things like that.
Being the only designer, there's nobody else that is the guardian of the design. There is no one, the gatekeeper to the UI, that makes sure that if I'm going to click a save button on page 1 and click a save button on page 75, it's going to behave exactly the same way.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. This is another episode of Make an Impact. Today, we're doing another episode of Meet the UX Designer, or an interview with a UX designer. And today we have Jackie Lampard.
Hello.
She's been with us since 2020.
Yes.
She's been a senior UX designer. She's been lead on multiple projects, helping clients out with enterprise and mobile applications. And so today we want to hear her story and hear a little bit more about what she does as a designer. Welcome to the show, Jackie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Definitely. So just to get us started, what inspired you to pursue a career in UX design?
I love to understand how things tick. I have a huge passion for solving problems. My writer friends say, don't ever say passion, but I guess it kind of is. So I'm actually half almost left and right brained. So my father was an engineer, my mother an artist. So it kind of just smacked in the middle for me almost perfectly. I started in the design industry. I wanted to be in advertising. I wanted to make TV ads. That's dead and gone now as an industry. But I started working in agency and I was designing everything from a 160-page coffee table book to a map to social media posts. And when I started to get into the digital aspects, I really enjoyed that because I really enjoy understanding the technical aspects of things as well. So when it comes to looking at, okay, I've got a book in front of me, I need to understand, okay, this is going to be as quick to read as possible. I'm going to get the point as quick as possible. What is going to be clear? What is not? So when I was just starting out in publication design and basic graphic design, that was always more interesting to me than I need a flyer. Why do you need a flyer? You sure you need a flyer? I think I need a flyer. No, you don't need it. So it's like telling people how to solve their problem and like, what do you actually want to do with this? Then say, I want a flyer. And that kind of led me into this journey of UX where I really, really enjoy just going into what is the problem and how can I solve it? And I build puzzles, I play Sudoku, I do crosswords, I'm problem solving 24/7 as a hobby. So if I was in any kind of industry in a working environment where I'm not doing that, I would feel like I'm not challenging myself enough. And then that's when I get bored. So I need to be busy in order to be happy. And I really enjoy it.
Did you go to school like for graphic design or?
Yes, I did a degree in visual communications, which covered marketing and design, as well as multimedia, copywriting, creative communications on an interesting level, like critical studies. You had to break things down and understand why they were the way they were and analyze it and argue it. It was actually a really interesting subject.
Okay. You definitely have an engineering mindset.
It helps a lot with the development team as well, because I'm quite embedded with the projects that I work on. I don't come in as a contractor that's just going to do the work and then pass it on. I QA it myself as well. I get involved in the conversation with the developer. We meet kind of one-on-one with engineering and engage with them to find out where the limitations are. So like we have AE stories where I get involved with the developer on calls and chat through the limitations. What do we want? And then from there, we get something that is both user-focused, business-focused, okay, that's 3 things, and makes the application the best it can be for what.
Cool. Let's talk about a recent project because you're about to. And let's dive into something that you can, I guess specifically highlight a success story any challenges, strategies, and things like that being a UX designer, whether you've been a team of one and you've been on a team of multiple designers? Can you tell us a little bit about a certain client story?
So I'm not going to mention any client names, but when I
Yes, please
started
don't.
on this fairly large project, which is more than 70 features, it is an enterprise application as well as a mobile application, which is a diminished version. So it's not as many features, but it is quite regularly used on site by the user.
And it's an older application that was
Yes.
redesigned from.
Yes, it's a complete overhaul of the UI, of the UX, but not
The tech
entirely.
stack.
The calculation engines are very much the same logic. So the entire application has been brought over into a new brand, and with that came a lot of challenges in the sense of older change averse product managers as well as users. So the feedback we've gotten since the change has been really great. People that are long-term users and brand new users that have never used the original product before have raving reviews, and even the QA teams that work on both the old product and the new product, they don't want to work on the old product anymore because it's more frustrating for them to do basic testing than it is to just click through and work in the new product. So it's been really positive. Obviously, there's a few bugs and there's a few things here and there that we work on, and we meet regularly with product to iron those out. That's why, as a designer, I also assist with QA to make sure that what we plan with product is what is executed, and that the developers are able to fully get all the questions they need answered quickly. Because sometimes these things are Sev3 urgent and have to go out. If someone's unable to use their software to do their day-to-day work, it can become quite limiting quite quickly, and they might have to get that done within a day or within 3 hours. So sometimes these things are quite on the chopping block, but it's been a great experience working with them as a team. It's very integrated. In the beginning, it was a real struggle. I admit it took about 3 years to get a process going that also had a variable change and a high staff turnover at first. They started out with a very different design leadership strategy, and eventually we found that we didn't need a design leader. It was more of a roadblock.
We were the design leader.
Yeah, I became the design leader in the end. But it was like a bottleneck in a huge way, because there was no communication between us as the designers. At the time, it was myself and 3 other designers, and then the development team. We were very cut off. And when that was happening, there was massive disjoint in the actual output, which led to a lot of technical debt. And we're still trying to get rid of that technical debt today. It was a bit rushed to go into production from a leadership perspective, but now we've come with a proper process and a strategy to get through everything that's in the backlog and start moving things along. And some things are sometimes feature orientated. We want to get a new feature out for the new client that's coming on board, and they specifically use a feature. Otherwise, we're going to focus on bugs in a large aspect and sort of streamlining and improving performance.
Okay. And right now they have the new design live, or a new application live with certain clients.
Yes.
And
It's
been received pretty well.
Yeah. So we've got 2 or 3 new users that have never used the original product. When I say users, I mean companies. They're quite large organizations that are multiple locations, and they're not only in the US, it's international. We're actually internationalizing the application for various languages and browser locales. So French, German, various different Englishes as well, Portuguese are all coming on board for internationalization, which is quite exciting. And it's been an interesting journey, learning and uncovering all of that. And yeah, I think it's been a good process so far. The developers that are working on this are also quite well versed in this area.
So it sounds like, obviously communication is an important point, especially between teams. What do you see? Let's get into maybe some of the aspects of the business side of things, of where do you see some of the learnings or some of the mistakes that were made from a business strategy standpoint to the basically from, ideation to the design. Let's take that first stage. What mistakes do you see them kind of making, or what risky decisions have they made so far, and how they've improved, or what can we do to improve on that?
When you're not familiar with design or working with a UX team or person, your mindset is more engineering than user. So it took quite a bit of conversation and coaxing, and you plant a seed and you hope it grows, and eventually it did. That we kind of moved them into a different mindset where they became more user focused in the end.
Versus feature focused.
Tolerant, yes, more tolerant of I don't want my logo to be the biggest thing on the screen because it's not for me, it's for my user. Mm-hmm. The user must be happy with what they're getting. It's not about the business entirely. Obviously, there's business goals that have to be achieved. We have a new feature coming up that has a very steep business goal. And we've had conversations about the MVP, which is the minimum viable product, and what that's going to involve. So from a starting perspective, from the design side, we looked at how we could solve the major problems, which were people were running costs through the system in the old application, where they could charge twice for the same thing. And this is a very big risk. So we wanted to try and solve that with the least amount of cost involved and time first before rolling out the entire new feature. But when we spoke to the CEO, he wanted to roll out the entire thing from scratch. He luckily said time isn't an issue, which is amazing.
Sounds a bit risky.
Yes. So there's a lot of money and a lot of time going into something that might not be adopted, or might need a lot of rework. We don't know. We did some basic user testing with it, but the users that we got were not actual end users for the most part. There was quite a bit of resistance on people because this is quite a time-intense business as a whole. It's people that don't have a lot of time to spend, and they don't have a lot of time to do their day-to-day job. Now, to go and spend time doing this was something they weren't really available for or that willing. Mm-hmm. And the feature itself is also it's data intensive, and it's really interesting. It's great reporting data. It's kind of, if you don't populate the data, you don't get the result that would benefit your business. But if you do, you can really help yourself. It's just the time. Mm-hmm. The time is a lot. So we wanted to test how time intensive it would be. And business goal was to make money as fast as possible and not to solve a user problem. And because of this, we haven't been able to prioritize solving this huge risk over pushing out a massive feature that allows people to invest in something they haven't actually tested properly. So that's the risk. We did convey the risk to them. They've made the decision regardless. It's now going through the journey mapping process and user story mapping. So we're starting out designing the actual MVP now, which is they've said time isn't an issue, but then some of leadership is also saying, we want it by the end of the year. So that's in 6 months. It's a lot of work for such a short time. And Russia
doesn't sound too agile with the time constraint.
It's not agile, but it varies.
We know that product owners, UX used to be the glue that kind of brought everything together between business, dev, and design. But now product owners are pretty much that glue between business, design, and development. What have you seen as far as what makes a successful product owner? Because from my experience, we've seen, that can make or break your product is a good or bad product owner. What have you seen? I'm sure, as a UX designer, we always try to tell our product owners to take innovative risks, but kind of tell me a little bit more about your experience and how you've worked with the product owners and how you've tried to get them to change their mindset if you needed to.
We've had a few of them. As I said, staff turnover is a little higher than it should be. There were some that would kind of go rogue and just do what they want, which was really interesting. So you'd build a whole design system, you'd work to a cohesive process, and then they would just go, let's just go and do this on this page, even though there's a pattern of behavior for this.
Mm-hmm. They won't ask designers, even though they have one on their team. Yep.
So this was also a lot of change aversity. It's people that have never worked with designers before. They've not used to UX. They just want to get engineering happy quickly, and they just push on the accelerator without putting it into thought. The problem with that is there's a lot of rework, and it just created a very dense backlog. So for that role, you need somebody that's decisive and that is able to take feedback, somebody that can work in a team, not somebody that works in a silo. You need to be able to accept constructive criticism, be able to take ideas, be able to give ideas, and be a collective. Again, communicate. We now have a really great process. The current product owners are really good. I'm quite happy with them. We've got a great team going. We now have everybody's in a meeting every week about anything design related. Anybody in that meeting can choose the agenda. So anyone can add a point they want to discuss, and everyone listens, which is great. And everyone gives their opinions and their feedbacks. And obviously there's people that can veto, but you have the right to say, and you actually get autonomy, which is amazing. So in the beginning, it was more perceived that as a team as Impact, we were external and we don't have a say on the design. But being the only designer, there's nobody else that is the guardian of the design. There is no one, the gatekeeper to the UI, that makes sure that if I'm going to click a save button on page 1 and click a save button on page 75, it's going to behave exactly the same way. And a lot of that lives in my head, which is its own thing. But it is also documented in a very vast design system, which took more than 8 months to produce, and is constantly updated. So constantly updating that also takes time, which is part of my responsibility, as well as every time we do make a big decision where something is going to affect the way something works, not just what it looks like, then that has to be updated and it has to be agreed upon between the different team members. The product owners have to be involved in that decision making, as well as the engineering department and myself. And then from there, product owners have actually found the design system helped them a lot, because they could just go, okay, search a word that they were looking for in a story or that an engineer has asked them, and they could go and find it. And if they didn't know, they could just message me and I'd be like, oh, hey, it's over here. And also with that learning and development, creates all the help information. They're using Zendesk for that. So they create all of the documentation that goes around, all the screenshots and everything. And they say, what is this icon called? I need to refer to it in the documentation. So now we have an open chat where I just go, hey, it's this. And it's as simple as that. And there's no more waiting for emails or long ask you. It's just, you can just ask me directly. And that's been a lot better. Which is, again, not having a bottleneck of multiple leadership roles in a unnecessary flowchart of hierarchy.
Yeah, I think an important point here is that even though a company is a software company or has software, maybe they created 10 years ago or 5 years ago, doesn't make them an expert in creating new software. And, whatever got them there to begin with, what we've seen, and I'm sure you've seen that, it doesn't make them an expert to get them to the new place or innovate to a new product. And it seems like it's rife with bad habits and like, this is what we did before, so let's try it again. Or, this is what I think I'm comfortable with, so I don't want to change the way I do things. And so I think this is a good kind of segue into maybe what, from the things that we do and the processes that you've been involved with, what do you believe sets our company apart from others in the industry or other places you've been?
I see us as not just a contractor. You're not just somebody that's coming to work on a project and disappear. You become part of a team. You're embedded. You're a bum in a seat in the team itself without the HR hassle. So you don't have to, as a company, well, as a client in this case, have to deal with labor resourcing. Impact does that for you, takes the risk for you, and you get a person that's fully embedded in the company as if they were employed. So it's a really nice option for clients, and it's really nice for us as designers, because we get stable, consistent work with a team that you actually build a relationship with. You build a rapport. You have a respect between the team members. It's not like, oh, yeah, I'm going to ask your opinion, but I'm not going to take it. It's autonomy. It's stronger. It's lasting. And it's also great for your portfolio.
And I think you made a good point too. Design systems is such a big thing in the design world, especially using certain tools that help you accelerate and create a design system. But we know that, if you're going to have different teams, different products, and this is all within one application, which can be huge. If you don't have a design system, we know things will be inconsistent. If you have people going rogue, all of a sudden this drop down over here is going to look different than the drop down on this page. And that consistency is going to just add to the cognitive load, more tech debt, things like that. And I'm sure as you're building that design system, is there any other, I guess, ways in which you've created, especially being a team of one, if there's a bigger team of designers, tell us a little bit more about how you manage from that ideation to actually creating wireframes, user testing, and then design system management?
There's a lot of research that goes into it. So looking at obviously trends that are going on, forums, discussions, articles, that sort of thing, looking at what other applications do, typical best practice, following obviously the basic rules of UX as well. And then looking at the patterns within the application that already exist. So to not change that in one place, we say, versus another. And from there is just wireframing lo-fi. So basically like a blueprint you would see for a house when you first start. From there you start coloring it in and adding detail, and you start testing it yourself. So as you start testing it yourself and you start asking yourself, where am I going to get the data for this input field? Then you start looking at, okay, how someone would populate this. Then I tend to get someone to play with it and see where they struggle. Don't really tell them too much information, just see what they do. And then from there, I go into, if I can get actual users, it very much depends. With my current situation in this project, there's a very big struggle with getting users that are actual valid users or end users.
Mm-hmm.
And also
and getting the right feedback too, I bet.
Yes, they're quite averse to user testing. In the very beginning, it was almost a waste of money in their opinion from the feedback that we got. So they just wanted to push everything out and then say, oh, you can play with it in a sandbox. So now that we've actually gotten more trust with the client and built a stronger relationship and planted some seeds a while ago and they've grown, they are now like, oh, hey, this is actually beneficial. We've learned a lot. We should do this more often. So it's really interesting how you kind of have to prove it in a way, because they're not familiar with the whole concept of what does a user want. They just go, how can we build this quickly? So it's a different mindset. But I find that the testing part is something many companies overlook. It's not just this client. It's quite a common thing to have to try and negotiate to get them to buy in. And then, once we've done the user testing, then we'll start implementing like proper screens. And obviously there's a user flows and user journeys. So if you've got something that like, if I click this radio button, it's going to do this, and you're going to have a spider diagram that goes off and off and off and off. And that's really helpful as well for the product owners that have to write stories for the developers, because then you've already solved all of the problems. They don't have to really think. So that saves them a lot of time. And then when you walk through the whole process with them, they have a lot of input and questions and get that all out there before it goes into the developer's inbox. And once everything is agreed upon between development and design and product, then it goes into the design system. And the design system at the moment is broken down by components, templates. So templates being like much bigger. So this is a whole page. This is what our page would look like. Components being things like buttons, checkboxes, radios, that sort of thing. And then we've also got brand. So brand is like colors, shadows, fonts, logo regulations. And then we've got content. So the content comes down into validation rules, how we write, how we speak, tone of voice, accessibility rules. Accessibility is also something product owners do not prioritize. We've actually got a colorblind product owner. So that's been really interesting. So we can learn a lot from him and grow the product a little bit more accessible, because we've actually got a product owner that cares about accessibility. Whereas majority of my experience has been accessibility is very low priority. Even for keyboard usage, which is quite common in the current old application, they are not prioritizing keyboard usage as an accessibility means for the new application.
I know we've been involved in a few different, I don't want to say workshops because they usually have a bad rep, but more of a, we call it an immersion sprint and a design sprint. These are exercises in which you get to something that's an outcome, that's a concrete outcome, whether it's more of identifying an MVP, a roadmap, to actually creating a prototype to test with users. How's your experience with working with those sprints on your side? How do you feel about those?
Well, at first, when we were starting with the feature, which is quite big, it's very vast. It's going to take a long time to build. They wanted to discuss that over a spreadsheet and a phone call. So that was their original plan. And we had to convince, it took a bit of convincing, I admit, that a sprint would be the best solution, because there were a lot of stakeholders that had a lot of opinions, and there was a lot of uncertainty from product. So it wasn't just uncertainty from me coming into the project not knowing what they need, but from them themselves, they didn't know what they need. So they agreed to a design sprint, but it was not the 5-day sprint that we are normally doing. It's the 3-day, 3 days,
Yeah.
2 days, 2 days of in a boardroom the whole day with 16 people. So it was a lot more stakeholders that we would have normally worked with. So there's a lot of distractions and people running off topic. But then there was also really good cohesive output. People got to get, you kind of just vomit out all the ideas first, and then the real ideas come out. So we got a lot of that out quite quickly. And then we went through a great process. Scott facilitated it, and he's wonderful. I really commend him on his ability to never show
heard the cats.
frustration. He looks like everything's going perfect all the time, even when time is running out and people are waffling. So I quite enjoyed doing a session with him. I learned a lot from him as well. And yeah, it was really great hands-on drawing. We all drew ideas. We had leadership drawing ideas. We had product owners and account managers and heads of capital projects drawing ideas. And everybody was designers for a day. It was amazing to see how people came up with, and people voting and tending to have a similar opinion about what they voted on was very interesting. And yeah, we came down to, at the end of the week, we had everything drawn up, and we had a storyboard for what we were going to do, which then I took home with me, and over the next few weeks progressed into a wireframe for a test prototype. No, it wasn't obviously the final thing. It was just to test what we could, because we were supposed to do all of that in the design sprint in a week. But it took them about a month to get us to start getting users. So that was quite a delay in the process, which dragged it out quite a bit. The testers that we got were about 8, so it wasn't a lot. And then only 2 of them were real users. So we did meet with them afterwards, almost to try and have the last day session of a 5-day, which was 3 months later, to discuss, should we still keep testing? What do we want to do for an MVP? And they said they didn't want to test any further. They wanted to start producing and getting it out, and they wanted to do the full thing from start to finish. So it was not a 5-day. That would be, I think, one of the most interesting sprints that kind of compromise between the business's plan and the actual process that it should be.
Yeah, I think you make, obviously a good point is that you get to at least the ideation and the story, what you want to test, and the big chunks that you want to understand from your users. And it's something that if you are going to each of these 16 people, these people's ideas, talk to them, meetings, hey, what do you think? And going back and forth, that process, what people think that's what you should do, would take far longer to get to a story map, ideation, what we need to test, versus putting people into a room, putting them on the spot, being able to facilitate that kind of discussion. Like you said, it is an art form to get 16 different viewpoints and kind of consolidate into a story within 2 days. And yeah, that's something that I know that helps us stand out a bit from what people think UX should be. And us being involved in that type of facilitation has been pretty powerful with the clients. So they get to see that firsthand, especially when you've got, companies usually they're going to be dysfunctional if they need consultants in some way. So for us to herd those dysfunctional cats into a better process faster is always a good feeling when we do that.
They had great feedback. They loved it. Yeah. The clients absolutely enjoyed it. It was also really nice to meet people face to face.
Yeah, you flew in from South Africa.
Yes, actually. So remote working it's got its great benefits. But when you've been working with a team for 4 years and you haven't met them, it's like, hi, this is what I look like. And it's like when you're actually looking for a person and you don't know what they really look like, but you can tell them from their voice, and you're like, oh my gosh, I know who you are. That was So funny for me. But it was a lovely opportunity to meet everybody. And actually, we spent social time after the sessions in the evenings together, getting little catch ups. And we all have our own little inside jokes, actually, as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
It's nice.
And we're not going to talk about any Christmas
Yeah.
signs either.
Yeah.
That's a story for another day. How do you stay? So let's just get to maybe some kind of tips and tricks for any other UX designers that might be listening. But, how do you stay up to date with the latest trends, and what kind of lessons that took you a long time to learn in your career that you can kind of give advice to?
So I belong to a really great Slack channel, ZA Tech and ZA Prod. So it's a forum of freelancers, developers, designers, copywriters, a mixed bag. And if I honestly don't know something, it's an open environment to ask. I've met some really great people on there that are very willing to help. I've also got some friends from working otherwhere that have actually been on that group too. So if I've got a technical question and it's 9 a.m. in the morning and my client's still asleep, I can actually just go ask and they help me, and it's really great. And otherwise, I read a lot. I look at like social media UX trends that I follow. I follow a lot of on social media as well. And then team members, I ask questions. There's the other designers that have, a lot of them actually have more experience than me, that I enjoy chatting with. And we've actually both learned from each other. And then we have our monthly knowledge share sessions where we discuss what we've learned.
Stop canceling and postponing.
I've learned great things from Jamie on there as well, and from Nikki. So it's there's also lots of tips and tricks that I get just from Medium articles and playing with lots of applications. I download strange applications and I play with them. It's just using it and then understanding what's annoying and what's lovely. And then when I find something that's lovely, then I just take note of it. And I'm like, if I'm going to build something like a calculator, I'm going to play with a lot of calculators. So kind of how I go. I learn by doing.
Okay. Where do you see, obviously AI is getting big. I guess, where do you see the field of UX and design going in the next 5 to 10 years?
I don't think UX and UI will necessarily fall away. I like to think that AI will be a tool for getting rid of menial work like image sourcing and message writing. And God, the amount of error messages that I have to write is a lot. I feel like I'm an expert in error messages at this point.
You're an expert copywriter.
Yes, I never wanted to be a writer. I worked actually at a newspaper for a few years, and I never wanted to be a writer. I even found, and you see those Facebook memories of things you wrote when you were like 21, and you were like, I wish my boss would just realize I'm not a writer. So prove myself wrong there. And for junior work, I think it's going to take away a lot of junior work, which is sad for juniors that are upcoming and want to learn, because there's not so much that they can take on, because people are just going to use a free AI or Canva or something instead of paying a junior. So there's that. But also, I don't want to do that work. So it's definitely going to save the hassle. And some of my colleagues, former colleagues and friends in the industry, they use AI to write blogs. They use that to do all their writing. So I kind of feel sorry for actual copywriters, journalists and the like, that all you're going to be doing now is fact checking and proofreading. So it is going to take a big toll on making everything look the same. It's definitely got to find a way to be unique. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a very theme-based world of digital products. Every phone is going to be the same. Every website is going to be the same. Everything is just going to look boring. And
that drives us designers crazy.
Yes.
No uniqueness.
I, as a designer who started out in publishing and moved into all the other areas, I've worked in pretty much everything, branding, all of it. I don't ever work in templates, like website templates. I'd work in from scratch, completely unique, designed just for you. And in that, there is a sense of, this is my website that I paid for, that I know is mine. It's not a theme forest that someone created. And AI is just generally going to be, in my opinion, doing a lot of the menial tasks for the next few years. Tech advances very quickly. So after that phases out, I mean, already you can make photos, generate photos out of anything, although sometimes they have 6 fingers. And it's a little risky, but it's gonna be smoothed out, and it's not gonna take too long to do that. The more people input feedback, the better the AI generation is. And I mean, things like gardening applications, which I've started playing with, are really interesting because it can identify your plant, okay, but it's going to get it wrong a lot at first. And then it starts to get better. So people are starting to respond and say, no, it's actually this. And then it's going, okay, now when I see this maple tree, I'm going to say it's a maple tree. I'm not going to say it's a sweet gum. So it's going to learn because of human input. And that's when it's going to start to get more advanced. I don't think the robots are going to take over the world, and it's not going to be like Fallout. Yes, I can't predict the future.
Or Terminator.
Yeah.
And we'll leave with one final question. If there's a passion project that you could do, what would that be?
I really enjoy education. I also have I've got a real love for helping people and doing the right thing. Animal welfare is a big cause in my heart. Education in South Africa is really bad. With a lot of unemployment because people are not educated. I'm somebody that self-studies a lot. I'm currently doing a diploma in psychology that I just decided to do last year.
Yeah, cool.
I'm very learning. You do those 5 strengths assessments. Learning is one of the top 2. The other one is says don't build empires. It's kind of commander. And now I'm deviating. So I've lost my point. What was I saying?
What's a passion project?
Passion project. Yeah. So something like an educational app, something like Duolingo, but works because Duolingo doesn't work. I've been doing it since 2012, and I still don't know how to speak French. So something that works.
I only know a couple French words.
Yeah,
and I don't think they're clean.
I can read it. I can read the shampoo bottle when it's in French, but I can't speak it. I mean, it's great for internationalization right now because I know what things are supposed to say, but I don't know how to speak it, and I can't speak to a French person in French. And it's a very difficult language to speak. But yeah, education, healthcare, also very important, and anything to do with animal welfare. I love animals. If I could just work with animals, I don't even know what I would do, but animals. Endangered,
like rescuing or
anything like that.
Maybe AI will get us to be able to talk to certain animals once they decipher that.
Well, there is that. Well, speaking about AI, they were interpreting the language of dolphins, and that they could actually.
That's what I heard.
Yes, and they actually found dolphins and orcas have a language that they speak to each other. So they have a mixed language that they use when they talk to each other, but they actually speak different languages. So they have a second language. So that was really interesting. And that's cool things about AI that are really interesting.
Yeah. So Duolingo for dolphins and orcas is Jackie's next passion project. Well, I think with that, we'll wrap it up. Definitely anybody listening, do the like and subscribe and all that great stuff. Thanks again, Jackie, for coming to the show. It's been great hearing your story. It's been awesome. And everybody, thanks for tuning in, and, check us out on our next episode. With that, have a good day, and see you later.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye.